Right, good morning everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee of the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority. We have enough members present to be able to continue the business, and I'm proposing to conclude the meeting no later than 1 p.m. So I'll start straight in. It's noted that could you please have your participants list up, members, and also the chat, but do bear in mind that the chat function forms part of the data captured by the meeting, so please don't put on there anything that you wouldn't like to have put on a postcard and put through the door of every constituent of your division or ward. The blue hand function, members, is there for you to indicate that you wish to speak, and I'll be paying attention to that during the meeting. Please use the blue hand function to indicate whether you wish to speak. So if we start in then with apologies, and I believe that we have one apology and substitution. So I'll ask our scrutiny officer to run us through the apologies and also to take a roll call of those present at the meeting today.
Yes, the only apology received is from Councillor Grenville Chamberlain from South Cambridgeshire District Council, and he's substituted by Councillor Heather Williams. So as far as the roll call is concerned, if you could just respond with your attendance. This is mainly to help out the those watching on the live link. So I'm going to read the members out one by one. If you could just say here or present or whatever you used to say at school. So Councillor Lorna Dupree.
Present.
Councillor Alan Sharp.
Present.
Councillor Peter Fain. I understand he will be joining us. His substitute Councillor Chamberlain, substitute Councillor Heather Williams.
Present.
Councillor David Mason.
Present.
Councillor Anne Hay.
Present.
Councillor Steve Corney.
Present.
Councillor Patricia Jordan. Not as yet. Councillor Marcus Gehring.
Present.
Councillor Kevin Price. Councillor David Connor. Councillor Jocelyn Scutt.
Present.
Councillor Andy Coles.
Present.
And Councillor Ed Murphy.
Present.
That's the full list of members.
Thank you very much indeed, Robert. And I'd also like to welcome back to the Combined Authority Anne Gardiner, our scrutiny officer, who is now back with us after a period of some leave. So Anne will be coming back to work with us 2 days a week until the end of October, and will return then to full-time work, and will be working with Robert Fox on the transition, which will take place until Christmas. So welcome back, Anne, and looking forward to working with you in the coming months and years. Declarations of interest then at item number 2. Would any member wishing to declare an interest please put their blue hand up to indicate that? Councillor Murphy.
Yes, I'd like to raise a declaration on item 6, Wisbech Rail. I've had some paid consultancy work within the rail sector.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Murphy. Yeah, great. Now we come to the minutes then of the previous meeting. Does anybody...
Chair, just before we proceed to that, sorry, may I? Yeah, thank you. May I put in an apology for Councillor Price, because he's clearly indisposed if he's not answering his phone. So I think it's only fair to put in an apology for him, if I may. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry to have interrupted.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Murphy, your blue hand is up again. It now isn't. Okay, thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting then you have in your agenda pack. Is there any question or issue you wish to raise regarding the accuracy of those minutes? Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Just that as I wasn't present, I'll abstain from confirming if they're accurate record or not.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Williams. I think we're unlikely to progress to a vote on this, but obviously if you weren't there, you wouldn't be able to comment or endorse their accuracy. But I see no one wishing to challenge the accuracy of those minutes, so we'll accept those. Public questions is item 4, and I have not been advised of any public questions. Scrutiny officer, that's correct, isn't it? There's no public questions.
No public questions, that.
Thank you. Item 5 then, and I'm hoping we have ready to join us the Right Honourable Baroness Brown. So we will wait for Baroness Brown to join us and then I will introduce her.
Hello.
Hello, good morning and very much welcome, Baroness Brown of Cambridge. To the public, I'd just like to introduce Baroness Brown, who is the chair of the Combined Authorities' new independent commission on climate change. So Baroness Brown, if I just introduce her to you, is an engineer with a career spanning senior engineering and leadership roles in industry and the academic world. She is a member and deputy chair of the National Committee on Climate Change, which is the government's independent advisory body on building a low carbon economy and preparing for climate change. Baroness Brown is also chair of the Committee on Climate Change's Adaptation Committee, non-executive director of the Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult, and chair of the Carbon Trust. She was non-executive director of the Green Investment Bank and led the King Review on decarbonising transport in 2008. She's a fellow of the Royal Academy of Engineering and of the Royal Society, and was awarded the DBE for services to higher education and technology. So a very warm welcome, Baroness Brown. I think we have a few questions for you, and I hope that you'll have received some of those submitted in advance, but perhaps I'd like to give you a bit of space just to tell us anything you would like to tell us by way of introduction about your role on the Commission and about the Commission itself.
Well, the Commission has got underway. I think we've now had 3 formal meetings. We have almost all of our members now in place, and we have adopted the framing for how we want to produce our report, which is that what we want to get to is a situation where, despite the fact that the climate is changing, that we have a thriving and resilient region. And that in order for that, we will need to both reduce our emissions and increase our resilience, so take appropriate adaptation measures. We want to make sure that the actions that we are going to recommend to increase resilience and reduce emissions, that those actions are all framed in terms of the positive societal benefits that those actions can deliver to the region. So we want to look very closely at, how do we make sure these actions have positive benefits for skills, jobs and growth? How do we make sure these are actions which will also enable our citizens to be healthier? How can we make sure they ensure we have thriving nature and more green space? Because actually, if we take the right kinds of actions to reduce our emissions and to increase our resilience, there are a huge number of societal benefits that they can also deliver. And we're also going to be looking very closely at what are the enablers of these actions to reduce our emissions. So things like research and innovation and finance, behaviour change, education, communications, policy, and nature itself, all of which can enable the kind of change that we need to make. So that's our if you like, our framing for the way we're looking at this approach. We're going to develop a report with sectoral chapters on buildings, transport, industry and business, waste, and agriculture and land use. And then we also will have other chapters looking at, well, first of all, introducing our approach, looking at the particular climate risks to our region, which include potentially drought. And we will also be looking at areas of particular significance for the region. So one of those is emissions from peat. Another, as I've indicated, is water supply. Another is energy, in particular the opportunities from renewable energy. We want a very strong focus on what the co-benefits and the societal benefits of taking climate change actions are. So benefits to people, the economy, and to nature particularly. And we will be making a range of recommendations. And very particularly, we also want to include a chapter in our report that's called something like "What Can I Do?", which is about actions for individual citizens and organizations. And we want to make sure we illustrate that with lots of examples from individuals and community groups around the region to highlight some of the brilliant things that are already going on at a local level. So that's a very, very brief kind of overview of the approach we're taking and what we've started out on. And I'm very happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much indeed, Baroness Brown. That's extremely helpful. I will use Chair's privilege to perhaps start off with some of the questions that I have. So you said that most of the members of the Commission have now been appointed. Have the management group and technical group been also appointed, and are they already working with you on your?
Yes, we've been very lucky in terms of support to be able to recruit Adrian Galt, who was for 10 years the Deputy Chief Executive and Chief Economist at the Committee on Climate Change. Adrian retired last year, so we managed to recruit him as a consultant who will be doing a lot of the work of pulling the chapters and the report together for us. Mm-hmm. We have a support group which includes Paul Rains from the Combined Authority, Professor Ian Leslie from the University of Cambridge, Jane Peterson-Todd from Cambridge Ahead, Andrew Lim from Cambridge City Council, Steve Cox from Peterborough City Council, Adrian Cannard from the Combined Authority, and Francesca Houston and Susanna McIntyre from the Combined Authority.
Right. Okay, that sounds good. So thank you for that. We are all aware that the establishment of the commission has lagged considerably from the decision to set it up. So what's the revised date for the publication of your final report, and are you intending to produce an interim report?
We're focusing on producing an interim report at the moment, with the intention that must come before the local elections. So the interim report is going to be the core of 2 or 3 of the key chapters of our final report, and in particular the chapters we're working on most closely at the moment are the ones on housing and transport. So right. Those are definitely going to come out, so that we are hoping early February.
Right, okay, that's excellent. And in the longer term, do you have an idea as yet of the end date by which your final report will be ready?
We do. I think it'll be early summer next year.
Early summer, okay. And are you expecting to publish the interim report fairly broadly for consultation and comment, or simply to the leadership group or the board, or how does that work?
I have to say I don't know, and we will try and fit in with what people would like. We're launching a consultation, which should be which we're considering at our next meeting, which I think is next week, and which should be coming out in October. And the that's primarily to get inputs from people, because I'm very keen that every chapter in the report is illustrated with case studies from around the region of things that people are doing, successes that people have had, so that people feel this does reflect them. It's not just a very analytical kind of approach. But depending on time constraints, we're very happy to be consulting. I mean, we are an independent commission, but we're very happy to have as many thoughts and ideas. So I'll ask the team to look at the timing issues for doing that.
Thank you very much. That's marvellous, because we've seen two different other commissions in operation. The Independent Economic Commission did a lot of that kind of public consultative work and a published interim report before producing their final report. On the other hand, the Public Service Reform Commission, I understand its interim report has gone only to the leadership group. It's not even made it to the public pages of the Combined Authority Board. So you've got two very different ways of engaging at opposite ends of the spectrum almost. And I was keen to see where you fit. And it feels like you're moving more towards the Independent Economic Commission in terms of openness and engagement about this.
We'd very much like it to be as open and as engaged as possible. The only constraint on that, from my perspective, will be time, I'm afraid.
And will you have a web presence to support that?
I believe that's being developed at the moment, yes.
Okay, because that was also very strongly in evidence with the Independent Economic Commission, which was good.
We've just been doing that thing that takes up a ridiculously large amount of time, which is agreeing a logo. So I think that's the start of this sort of thing.
Fabulous, fabulous. And final question from me before I open it up. Obviously, there are lots of other tiers of local authority that are already quite down the road on this, you know, in terms of having produced their own strategies and work plans and so on. How do you intend as a commission to relate to all of that work that is already in progress and well underway?
Well, I was talking to Adrian Galt about that this morning in a meeting, and Adrian Cannard has taken on board to pull together something for us, which summarises all of the different activities that are and initiatives that are going on across the different councils in the region. So I'm afraid until we see that, it's a bit hard to know how we might integrate it, but clearly we want to reflect on that.
Fabulous. Thank you very much indeed for that. I'll open it up now to other members to ask any questions they may have. Do we have any? Right, Councillor Coles to start us off.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Baroness, for your arrival and presentation. My particular interest is in the skills area of work within the Combined Authority, and I appreciate you've got a chapter on economy. Will that cover the provision of skills and training locally that will respond to that, or whether you'll be reviewing the sort of work that will be done that will contribute more broadly in terms of how the green economy can develop nationally?
I think we very much want to look at what are the local opportunities for skills. I mean, I think one of them, one area of where there are huge opportunities for technician and higher level skills is of course low carbon heating, and indeed the area of retrofit and things. And you know, I think it would be great to see an initiative in somewhere like Peterborough to with a college, and indeed I gather there are plans for a university to have a real focus on that, and partly because we need so much of it across the region, but partly of course Peterborough is so well placed to be, if we get ahead with this, supplying those skills out into the Midlands where they've got the same kinds of challenges. But we've got huge new building programs that are going to need all of those building management and low carbon heating and skills. And we're going to have an enormous retrofit program that's going to need them. And, you know, those should be really inspiring careers for young people, because actually and indeed for retraining people, because actually here is a career where you are genuinely contributing personally to our climate change targets. Actually, what you do every day is helping to reduce CO2 emissions. So I think, you know, we can make that a really inspiring element of the skills program. But I think there will also be many others that come up. That's just a very obvious one as a starting point.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Murphy.
Hello, Baroness Brown. I'm very pleased that work seems to now be underway and we're going to get an interim report. We've had some stuff previously on our housing programme and how we could have perhaps done more to tackle climate change. I'm sure others have got questions on that. I'd like to ask you about the logo, and just if you could give me some idea about the thoughts that went into it. You know, is a logo dominated by the Secretariat of the Combined Authority, or is it dominated visually by the issues that we need to tackle? I'm just wondering if you could give us some overview and the thoughts. Thank you.
I've raised your expectations too high. It's a rather elegant little bit of lettering with a curved kind of, a little curved picture which has some bulrushes on it. But the bulrushes have changed in size and colour. And I mean, we had a lot of discussion about whether, you know, there was quite, I mean, in a way, it's like the car. It's like who gets the car parking spaces. It can engage huge amounts of discussion when you really should be getting on with more important things. It's quite pretty. It was knocked up for us by the Combined Authority team who presumably do formatting of documents. We had some discussion about whether it should be in some ways more representative of what we're doing, but it wasn't what we wanted to spend the budget we have got for doing work on. So it's nice. It's inoffensive. It isn't going to communicate very much, I'm afraid, other than our name.
Thank you. It does sound as though it's going to reflect nature, which I think is quite important. It's going
to reflect nature, yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gehring?
Yes, thank you very much. Dame Julia, you're a brave woman to take on this role because, let me be quite frank, the leadership of the Combined Authority has not displayed the most climate-friendly kind of behavior. So you will face an uphill challenge in order to get your ideas heard and not be sidelined. And I'm very happy to hear that you will be reporting relatively quickly, because I think if we really want to make Build Back better and really tie the current pandemic measures with a shift in our behavior that goes towards carbon neutrality, we need these measures rather quickly, and we need these ideas very quickly. I'm very concerned that the Combined Authority hasn't declared, like most of its constituent authorities, a climate emergency. I'm not sure whether the urgency of the climate crisis has really reached the highest levels. So my first question is, how are you going to make sure that your work is not going to be sidelined? It's not going to be a fig leaf for otherwise climate damaging infrastructure projects or climate damaging building project that the Combined Authority undertakes. And second, can you shed some light on your membership, right? We're operating in an area of environmental protection writ large. So I think that even the legislation says we need to be quite open and transparent and engage with the public on environmental information. So are you going to have public sessions? Can you reveal the membership? Is it as diverse as our combined area? Do you have young people? Do you have more experienced members? Do you have a regional spread? The Combined Authority has a habit of recruiting from just one area. So I very much hope that the width and breadth of this Combined Authority will be represented in your commission. Thank you very much.
Well, let me start with the easy part of that, which is to tell you who the membership are. And we're just in process of, I think that the Combined Authority support team are just in process of getting short biographies of everybody ready to go on the website. So, but the membership includes Richard Astle, who is chair of Natural Cambridgeshire and also managing director of Athene Communications. We have the Very Reverend Mark Bonney, who's the Dean of Ely Cathedral. We have Dame Polly Cortis, who is who's joint chair of the Prince of Wales Business and Sustainability Programme and a non-executive director of Anglian Water. We have Rhiannon Osborne, who is a medical student at Cambridge University. We've got Dr. Emily Shuckborough, who's the director of Cambridge Zero. We've got Lynn Sullivan, who is an architect and chair of the Good Homes Alliance. We've got Ben Sretzer, who is an advisor at the Behavioural Insights team. And we've got John Shropshire, who's the chair of G's Fresh, the food and agricultural company. And we have Laura Diaz-Anadon, who's a professor of economics and climate change. So we have good diversity in terms of gender diversity. Sadly, we don't have good representation in terms of ethnic diversity, I'm afraid. Rhiannon Osborne, our medical student, is a brilliant contributor. In fact, she's pushing us and pulling us in all directions and continually challenging us. We don't have quite the representation from across the whole of the region that we were hoping for. We would like stronger representation. And of course, people are not actually representing their region. They're representing their area of specialist knowledge. But we would like to have stronger representation from the Fens, really. And we are still looking for 2 commissioners in the areas of a transport specialist and the areas of finance. In terms of how do we make sure the combined authority does something about it? Well, first of all, I think one of the things that's crucial is the quality of my commissioners, and they are all an extraordinarily capable and internationally known group of people in their areas. So I think, you know, it should be a very powerful report, and we are of course also independent, so we aren't engaging a lot with the leaders of the combined authority. We're getting on with doing our thing, and we will be very much focused on being pragmatic about things that can be done over the things that can be made to happen locally, and things that can make a difference. I mean, there are so many levers, of course, that are not in our hands locally. That doesn't mean we won't be making recommendations to national government, but of course the things we can get on with quickly are the things that are actually in local hands.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Jocelyn Scott, Councillor Scott.
You're on mute, I'm afraid, Councillor Scott.
Thanks so much. Yes, I was in full flight. I was just saying, by way of a brief introduction, that I was interested in the comments about the logo, because usually it's the mission statement that actually causes the problem. And committees, etc., or bodies are taken up with doing a mission statement rather than getting on with the mission. But it's pleasing to note that the logo has been resolved. But what I actually wanted to ask was that it's come up actually in the United States in different various contexts, that perhaps the terms climate change and global warming have had their day, because they become so well used that they somehow developed a somewhat anodyne effect. And what they're suggesting, some are suggesting in the United States, is that global warming and climate change, we should start designating or expressing what is really happening.
I'm afraid I'm struggling to hear you, I'm afraid.
Councillor Scott, something seems to have happened to your microphone. The volume dropped and now has disappeared. We can't hear you. Still can't hear you. Can we come back to you later, Councillor Scott? I don't think you can hear us either. Sue, could you drop Councillor Scott a note in the chat to let her know that we can't hear her and she can't hear us? I'm happy to bring her back later on, but I suggest we move to Councillor Corney and then come back to Councillor Scott later. Councillor Corney.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Baroness Brown. Not so much of a question, probably more of an observation or a comment, really. With my other hat on, I'm a small developer. We're currently building our biggest development to date. We're building 11 houses at the moment on one site. The observation really is that, you know, we try our hardest to sort of stand out a little bit and go a little bit above the, you know, the shed builders, as we like to call them. The issue I think we find is it might be an easier fix as well, to be fair, but Anglian Water is a very good example. We fit rainwater harvest systems into all of our new properties just because we want to, you know, it's the right thing to do. It's something that's close to my heart anyway. But trying to work with these companies, they tend to want the moon on a stick. And it's not, you know, we're not looking for a cash incentive, but maybe something a little bit easier to work with sometimes. You know, solar energy, again, it's something that we could quite easily install as we build a new house, but because the tariffs go with the owners, it makes it very difficult and it's almost to the point where it's impossible to install them to sell the house on. But like I say, it's not so much of a question, but a comment, and it's something I really look forward to seeing what comes out of this, because it's something that I'm you know, sort of close to my heart, and I enjoy. I strive to sort of build better houses myself. So,
well, that's very positive to hear, and I can only sympathise with you about the complexity of some of this area, and I'm hoping that the requirement for all new homes to be zero carbon or possibly zero carbon ready, or whatever their latest terminology is. I hope that will come with making this much more straightforward. And I hope also the current white paper on planning for the future can be turned into something that will also make planning much more effective from a climate change perspective as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fain. Is Councillor Fain? Yep. You're on mute, Councillor Fain.
Let's try again. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Good. Baroness Brown, thank you very much for coming. And I should say I'm very impressed by the quality of the commission that you have put together. My question relates to more a question of scope and focus. And obviously I wouldn't expect you to deal with the substance of this at this stage, but looking at Cambridgeshire, there has been a lot of focus recently on the contribution that peat can make to locking up carbon, as well as, of course, forestry. Cambridgeshire has obviously a large area of fen. You say you don't feel properly represented, although I'm very glad to see John Shropshire on your commission and knows a thing or two about fenland. Just wondering how you propose to deal with the very difficult questions of fen restoration, particularly bearing in mind the need to maintain production. Also, Cambridgeshire has a particularly low proportion of tree cover, and obviously tree cover in some circumstances can make a very important contribution. And I'm just wondering how you propose to deal with that in your commission.
Well, we've already identified peat as one of the really key issues for the region, because clearly the rough estimates of potential emissions from peat suggest they could be similar in magnitude to the whole of the rest of the region's greenhouse gas emissions. So we have to include peat. We have identified it's also an area where we don't have enough information at the moment. So it's one of the areas where we are intending to have to scope some research. And John Shropshire and Richard Astle are very keen to be the people who are going to be leading the thinking about what it is we need to be getting further information about there. So we see that as a very key part of it. We also see trees as a very important element. We see, in fact, we see nature as appearing in just about every part of what we want to do. We see nature as one of the really key enablers of climate stability in the region. So trees are very much on the agenda. We're very keen to be thinking about how natural capital accounting can make sure that that trees are seen as an asset and are properly looked after. And also very keen to, when we get to looking at the agriculture and land use chapter, but that'll be one of the later ones because it's one of the more challenging ones in many ways, but also looking at how the government's new environmental land management system can be used to support farmers and landowners and land managers in terms of multiple uses for land, which can really contribute to both adaptation and resilience, but also, of course, to emissions reduction.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Scott, has your technology sorted itself out? And if so, would you like to come in at this point?
I'm not sure. If you can't hear me, I'll put it in the chat.
No, we can hear you. Well, I can hear you, certainly.
Yes.
Okay, thank
you.
So thank you.
If you'd like to make your observation not in the chat, that would be helpful.
Right, thank you. I was seeking to indicate by the waving of my hands that I knew you couldn't hear me, but I could hear you. I was seeking to suggest that the terms climate change and global warming have become somewhat anodyne. And now it really seems to be the case that they've reached the level of checkpoints, that one goes through a list and checks equal opportunity, one checks environment, one checks climate change. So the suggestion in the United States is that we should be more focused. And their suggestion is that rather than global warming and climate change, we should talk about climate fires, climate floods, or global warming fires, global warming floods. Has your body, Baroness, given any thought to this issue of climate change and global warming becoming to some extent everyday and therefore not having the resonance or the importance that they should have because they become somewhat anodyne or, as I said, everyday? Thanks.
Well, I suppose that's, in some ways, that's one of my concerns about the term climate emergency, because normally where you have to respond to emergency is quickly and over a short period. And I worry about the concept that we have to respond to a climate emergency and be in a state of emergency over a period of the next 20 years. But I think we're trying to address that by we are going to have a postdoctoral researcher that Dr. Emily Shuckborough is organising for us, working with the current work the Committee on Climate Change are doing, which is the 5-yearly climate change risk assessment for the UK. So the idea is that one of the things that this researcher will do is actually draw out from that the climate change risk to the region, and that actually that will be the framing of our introductory chapter to the report, will be what are the climate change risks to the region? What could the region look like in 2050 and 2100 if we don't take action? And I think that sort of addresses your issue of, and for us it isn't particularly issues of fires, but it certainly is issues of potential drought if we don't take action on water security and water conservation by 2050. If we're on a 4-degree warming trajectory, so if we haven't all done our bit for Paris, very large chunks of this region could be suffering from very significant water shortages. So from that, I hope people will then be able to see why we will be wanting to make recommendations that we should have particularly high water standards for building of new homes, water efficiency standards. Because one of the things we do need to do in the UK is reduce our per capita consumption in order to make sure that there will still be good availability of water by mid-century. It may also mean that, you know, we need more reservoirs locally. It might mean that we need more interchange between different water company systems in order to provide us with more water from other regions of the country where they will still have enough water by mid-century. So we're hopefully going to have a good piece of work that will help us to frame this in terms of some of, at least, the climate risks there are to people in the region if we don't take the actions that we're recommending.
Thank you. If I could just briefly follow up by saying that I live in Cambridge, and of course we're concerned about the whole of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, but people in Cambridge are particularly concerned about the water consumption because of the huge amount of developments that's going on in terms of absolutely necessary council housing, but we have to ensure that there is sufficient water available. So I'm very pleased to hear that, and also the idea of focusing on risk and pinpointing what are the particular aspects of climate change directly related to this region. So thank you, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Fain, your hand is still up. Is that from your previous question, or did you want to come back? No, okay. And Councillor Gehring, same question to you.
No, I had a new question, if I may, Chair.
Yes, of course.
I don't want to keep the committee, but I wanted to come back to the sort of public outreach element of the Climate Commission's work, because I think if we look at the national level, if we look internationally at comparators, it's been good practice to have the occasional public meeting. You have a tremendous wealth of experience on your commission, and again, I congratulate you that you were able to recruit such eminent climate researchers. But wouldn't it make sense to use the opportunity to also have a couple of sessions that are available to the public? I mean, given this brave new world, we can't have in-person meetings, but we can actually stream some of our deliberations to the rest of the world. And I think in an area like climate change, it's extremely important that we take the public with us, and we inform the public about some of the really quite drastic consequences that inaction could yield for the future. So again, my plea, give us 2 or 3 public committee meetings so that the public can see some of the very serious discussions that go on at that sort of high level. It also will make your job. I noticed you have sort of ducked the questions about how will you influence the leadership and the infrastructure projects. I think it would help the Combined Authority tremendously if some of the deliberations could be public and leading up to the interim report, hopefully in February.
Well, thank you for that. I'm not quite so convinced of the added value of having our deliberations in public, but I am very happy that we will have some public engagement sessions. I think I would like us to be in a position where we have formulated recommendations and can engage with the public on draft recommendations. Rather than at these very early stages of our thinking, would be my preference, because I think we can make more impact there, and also as we formulate this this chapter or this section that's going to be called "What Can I Do" to discuss that with people. But we do have Ben Sretzer from, from the Behavioural Insights team, who is at the moment, leading the team advising on the public consultation that's being pulled together at the moment. So we're very much, we're very keen to engage with the public, but I also have to recognise, this is an unpaid commission who are giving their time for free. There are a lot of very busy people. Unfortunately, I can't offer them to be sort of all over the place all the time, because they all have high pressure day jobs.
Thank you very much indeed for that. At this point, I've been made aware of some questions that I hope have been forwarded to you, Baroness Brown, from one of our members who isn't here today. There's some quite specific questions regarding particularly construction, and I wondered whether, firstly, have you had notice of those questions?
I have seen, I got them this morning, I think, yes.
Right, okay. If I just run through them quickly, and I'm aware that they are quite specific, and therefore, and particularly as you've only had them this morning, you may not have very full answers prepared for us, but I think that I'd like to at least reference the fact that we did receive them. The first one is asking about all new commercial and dwelling planning approvals, including a mandatory condition that all the latest eco installations and techniques are integrated into the design specification to avoid excessive use of concrete and other construction materials. There's also a question about the eco installations, building materials and techniques being included in the construction and renovation work involved with change of use applications and proposals. There's a question about banning the use of heating, air conditioning and building materials with high carbon footprints. There's a question about the use of plastic materials being minimized or eliminated, controlling the use and disposal of plastics, and replacement of trees where trees are lost in order to facilitate building projects. So what of that will be within your remit and will be under active consideration? And do you have any initial thoughts you can give us? And I fully appreciate you may not be able to at this stage.
Well, we are. We have a subgroup working on the housing, on the buildings chapter, which is being led by Lynn Sullivan, the architect and chair of the Good Homes Alliance. They had their first meeting on Friday, and they discussed some of those issues. They certainly and particularly discussed use of green space and trees, the importance of trees and the multiple benefits, including shading as our climate gets hotter. So trees are very much on the agenda. Of course, many of those issues are about national level planning regulations and building regulations. So they may not be within the remit of things we can do locally. One of the key areas we're looking at for all of our chapters is there an argument that says we should be doing more in this area locally than perhaps is the national focus? And we think that's probably true in terms of the evidence we have, both in the buildings area because of the need for a lot of additional housing in the southeast and on this Oxford-Cambridge arc. So a huge amount of new building is being planned. So we think there is an argument that says we should be allowed to go further. And I think that may well be a recommendation to central government to say that in areas where they are expecting to see a huge amount of and need to see, and the government wants to see a huge amount of new development, the government needs to give those authorities greater power to have even higher standards for those buildings. And one of those arguments would be even higher water standards, because we're in an area that is going to become increasingly drought prone. But if we've got an awful lot of building, even higher standards in terms of building materials and things. So that could be one of our recommendations. We of course can't just wish that you should ban concrete or high carbon materials in buildings. And we do have a challenging area for us, which the Commission has discussed twice now, which is that area of how should we deal with, if you like, imported emissions. All of the climate change accounting in the Climate Change Act and also, of course, in the Paris Agreement is done on production emissions, so emissions associated with activity in a place. It's not the carbon footprint of that place. And that means that there's a need to think about, if you like, imported emissions. But of course, we don't have any data for the region on imported emissions. So it's very likely that that will come out as being one of our recommendations, that this is an area that needs considerably more work. But I think despite that, it's certainly something in terms of the what can I do a section of what we want to do, that we can give people guidance about what's the difference between the accounting for production emissions and carbon footprint, and what are the other things you can do to reduce your carbon footprint.
Thank you. And there's also, of course, something that has exercised this committee not that long ago. There is an aspect of house building which is directly under the control of the combined authority, which is those domestic dwellings into which it's putting the money that it's been given by central government. And we have been, I think, concerned at the apparent lack of interest or even recording of the environmental impact and the environmental footprint of those buildings. So that's something that is very much under the control of the combined authority in terms of where it invests.
One of the interesting areas in terms of emissions is, of course, Stansted Airport is not in the region. So nor is Heathrow, nor is Luton or whatever. So all of the emissions from people in the region who fly for, whether it's for holidays or conferences or business, are not counted in any local accounts. And so in terms of encouraging people to reduce their carbon footprints, there are some different issues from the ones that will actually be in the Cambridge and Peterborough analysis.
Indeed. Okay, thank you. I see Councillor Murphy's hand is up again. I'm going to allow him to have one more question, and then I'm conscious we need to let you go very shortly, Baroness, so this will be the last comment or question. Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. I'm quite encouraged by our conversation. And I think I would ask that there's a view that local plans are going to have to be rewritten now because of what's going on in planning. And I think there's a real necessity for the local authorities to talk to the Commission about their local plans and that to be part of it. Interim report in February, let's get them fit for purpose now. Imported emissions, it looks as though there may be recommendations on incinerators coming to the area. I think that's really, really good. And also, can we bear in mind that the combined authority is supposed to be the transport authority, and therefore it should be taking the lead on that as well? Thank you.
Yes, no, we're very, I mean, we do feel that transport is one of the areas where we can make some recommendations which have the potential to be implemented and have early impact, because clearly there are some real levers that the combined authority has there.
Right, thank you very much indeed to members of the committee for some very interesting questions and a very useful discussion, and thank you very much indeed, Baroness Brown, for joining us today and being so helpful and informative and interesting, and we shall follow this the process of this commission as it wends its way with extreme interest, I'm sure.
Well, happy to come and talk to you again when we've got some more material to talk to you about.
Marvellous. Thank you very much indeed for your time today. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Right, thank you very much indeed, committee. I thought that was a very useful discussion. Can we move on therefore to item 6, which is the Wisbech Rail project update, and I believe that we should have Roland Potter, Head of Transport, ready to join us, or yes, and do we have Adrian Cannard as well for this item? Yeah, okay, so very much welcome Roland to join us. Thank you, Roland. I see you're with us now. Warm welcome. So would you like to introduce the Wisbech Rail project update, please?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Committee. Thank you for the opportunity. Wisbech Rail, this is a report to update the Committee on progress on the development of Wisbech Rail. The background is that in November 2018, the Combined Authority Board commissioned the full business case and GRIP 3B study. And the principles behind that were to identify solutions from the 7 proposals that came out of the GRIP 2 study and get a defined single recommended solution. Wisbech has lost its passenger rail network some years after the beating cuts, but recognised as a result of that. And it's a town widely recognised by many in the industry as one of the largest towns in the country without connectivity to the rail network. The current business case builds on the original outline business case from 2015 and looked further at the options of a heavy rail and a non-heavy rail solution. It was to identify a station location, whether that be in the centre of Wisbech or on the outskirts of Wisbech, because there were three potential options from that last study, an engineering solution and a crossing solution, and a commercial viability going forward. The key outcomes of the draft business case were presented to the Combined Authority on the 3rd of June 2020, and the complete business case and GRIP 3B were presented at the Transport and Infrastructure Committee on the 8th of July. The business case concludes that the most commercially viable solution is a heavy rail service serving a station centrally located within Wisbech, with a 2 trains per hour service running between Wisbech and Cambridge to reach the highest benefit cost ratio. The board agreed to continue engagement with the Department of Transport and other central government departments to explore the future funding of this project through the Restoring Railways Fund. In June, the Mayor met with Chris Heaton-Harris, Minister of State for Transport, to discuss and highlight the importance of both the Wisbech Rail and Ely area capacity enhancements for the county. And there will be future meetings on that subject following our negotiations with BFT, Office of Rail and Road and Network Rail, which are ongoing. I'm sure the committee will be aware of the Ely area capacity enhancements, and there is actually a consultation online at the moment by Network Rail in relation to that activity. And this is a major constraint in the area for capacity of through services, and we continue to negotiate with Network Rail and BFT on this matter. So in the meantime, the government launched a comprehensive spending review of 2020, and the Combined Authority has made representation to them, which includes a case for funding the Wisbech Rail infrastructure costs. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Roland. I'm aware that some members may well have questions for you, so could you please use your blue hand in the participants list, members, if there's anything you wish to ask. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, I welcome the proposal because, as you say, Wisbech has not had a station for a long time. There were 2 points, and you've sort of answered one, but you've given me another thought, actually. I was going to, the 2 journeys per hour, which is the ambition, which obviously would be great, is interdependent upon the Ely area capacity enhancement. I noticed you mentioned there was a consultation with Network on at the moment with Network Rail, so I was interested in that. So I will try and take that offline to follow that up and have a look at that. The only other point I had, and was wondering what thoughts the business case has given to the traffic between the proposed site within Wisbech Town Centre and the proposed Wisbech Garden Town, which is I'm not sure exactly how far away it is, a couple of miles, to sort of avoid loads of, as we touched on when Baroness just now, she was talking about one of the areas being transport as an area that could be recommendations could be made. I wonder what thoughts are being given to, and I know obviously the town's not been built yet, but what thoughts are being given to transporting people who will obviously want to go from that garden town into Wisbech and then onto Cambridge or London.
So happy to answer both of those. I would suggest that I'm happy to share a link to the consultation with Susan Hall for her to circulate to the committee in relation to the area capacity consultation. I think it would be valuable for you all to see and take part in that.
Thank you, that would be very useful.
In relation to the garden town connectivity, there were a number of proposals which I think the garden town would have to pick up in relation to whether the railway line split, for instance, south of Wisbech and effectively had two routes, one into the centre and one up to another alternative station at the garden town. That was one option that was talked about. I think from the perspectives of this particular study, it was about the link between Wisbech, March and Cambridge and Peterborough primarily, with the garden town as a future feature. The benefits were not calculated in accordance with the capture of the garden town, because we wanted to prove a case that was sustainable with Wisbech in its current standing, as it were, in terms of its argument. Equally, I think from an integrated transport perspective, within Wisbech, any station solution needs to have consideration linked to the bus reform work that the Combined Authority is undertaking, and bus connectivity, sustainable transport connectivity, cycling, walking, etc., etc. So there are a couple of factors. One is to get the railway built, first of all. Two is to, as we go through the additional development stages, enhance those sustainability connectivities. So one of the things that is already in the design is a cycling and walking, segregated cycling and walking route from Wisbech to March for the length of that stretch as well. So that it's not just a railway line, it has the sustainable alternatives with it too. And I think those things would be expanded in conjunction with the bus reform and active travel measure activity in the next stages of the development.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions? I don't see any other hands up. No? Okay, thank you very much indeed, Roland, for that introduction. When is the next stage at which we should, as a committee, be wanting to see more information about this? Give us a suggestion of a date that we might want to come back to this.
Well, there's a discussion and a dialogue that's ongoing at the moment between my officers and myself with the Department of Transport Office of Rail and Road Regulation, and also Network Rail and the Restoring Railways Fund team. It is our intention to gain central government support to be able to progress the next stage of development of this, so that at least the connectivity between Wisbech and March can be in place, and as train paths become available through Ely, we have the option or opportunity to bid for those. Now that's a complex position, and probably enhanced or complicated depending on which side of the coin you see in relation to the current franchising change to concessions. So I think there will be future representation at Transport and Infrastructure Committee and Combined Authority Board should funding be required. And I would hope that be within the next months, not much longer than that. I would assume that the committee here would then seek an update following that, or around that sort of time. So whether that's November or whether that's January is dependent very much on the dialogue with central government at this moment in time. So it's difficult for me to give you much more of a steer than that, Councillor Dupre.
Okay, thank you very much. No, that's very helpful, Roland. Thank you. And thank you very much for your report and your contribution today. Thank you, members. Okay, so following on from that, our next item is the verbal update on the CAM Metro Task and Finish Group. Unfortunately, we don't have the chair of the Task and Finish Group with us today, but we do have a few members of the Task and Finish Group, and I think we would welcome a brief conversation about the progress of the Task and Finish Group and anything any of those members is able to tell us. So if you wish to make an observation on that, could you please indicate using the blue hand function, please? Councillor Gehring.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So we had really good discussions in April and May when we pressed officers for more transparency, more access to raw data, more engagement with the members of the Task and Finish Group. There were a whole lot of consultations, the results of which were not published, were not disclosed even to us. So initially there was some resistance, and then we felt we got a really a whole bunch of documents that were accessible to us, that we could give input on, that allowed us to scrutinize. We then scheduled a meeting in July, and unfortunately at the very last minute the officer said, oh, it's too early to really talk to the Task and Finish Group. We were a little bit surprised by that. And then it was said, well, we can't really talk to you before the board papers are published. So now there seems to be an understanding inside the combined authority that the Task and Finish Group only gets access or can discuss findings by officers when the board papers make them public. And I'm not sure that's a good trajectory for a Task and Finish Group, right? In the last year, we always knew what was going on. We knew what was being discussed before the board papers were published. Now we're allowed to discuss matters after the fact, when our input as a Task and Finish Group is no longer really necessary. You know, the chair has been trying to press, Councillor Price has been trying to press officers to, so that we have a meeting maybe with the Greater Cambridge Partnership as well, where the mayor now serves on the board. All these new developments that have to do with the One CAM strategy have not been either revealed or discussed to us. We don't basically, since May, we're basically flying blind. And I think that needs to be put on record in this overview and scrutiny committee. We need, we can't just have access to documents once they are at the board. We need to actually know what is going on in order to scrutinize the process properly. And it's funny because all the questions that we asked in January that we were advised to ask by the Center for Public Engagement are still to some degree outstanding. And so somewhere there's a broken telephone wire. And I hope that bringing this up in the overview and scrutiny committee itself can maybe start changing back to the culture that we had for the last 3 years.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gehring. Councillor Scott.
Yes, I'd just like very much to endorse what Councillor Gehring said. It's been apparent that there have been efforts to have proper communication, which actually, as Councillor Gehring clearly points out, has not come to fruition. And one of the issues I think that is of great concern, that suddenly we were presented with a complete rewrite of the original proposal. And we were also presented, and I don't think it was ever actually presented to the Task and Finish group, it came to our attention through the media rather, that there was a new person appointed to head up this, the CAM Metro project. So it does not seem to be good enough. If we are a scrutiny committee and the Task and Finish group is a group that's been established for the Task and Finish, for the Scrutiny Committee's purposes, then we certainly do need to put it on record that there's a great deal of disquiet as to the way that the Task and Finish group is not being presented with information that's necessary to work on if we're to be an effective Task and Finish group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Scuss. I believe you may be referring to the recommendation to appoint Lord Robert Mayor as chair of the Special Purpose Vehicle, which comes to the board on Wednesday. So just to clarify that that appointment has not yet been made. It's been recommended, but will be formally made on Wednesday. So clearly some concerns there on the part of the Task and Finish group around access to information and access to that information in a timely manner. When we come on the next item to consider the board agenda for Wednesday, there's quite a lot of material there about the special purpose vehicle shareholder agreement and the appointment of the chair and so on. So that is perhaps something on which we could hang a question from this committee to the board requesting engagement of officers with the Task and Finish group in a timely manner with all this information, particularly as things are now moving on quite fast, it seems to me. So I'll be suggesting in the next item that be a question we might wish to consider asking. Councillor Hay.
Yes, Chair, thank you. As it's been mentioned, lack of communication as far as the CAM working group are concerned. I would also say it's similar with the bus review, because I believe there has been some movement. And although originally we asked that it come back to us by the end of the year, it would be handy for us to know, what is going on in the meantime. Excuse me. Even if it's just by way of a note as to what progress has been made, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Hay. Yes, there's also an item on bus reform at the board meeting on Wednesday with an approval being requested to release some funding for short-term innovation trials. And yes, that's something that I would have very much hoped the bus Task and Finish group of this committee would be informed about and engaged with. So point well made, thank you very much. Councillor Scuss, your hand is still up. I assume that's just a legacy hand, I believe is the new terminology for that.
Yeah,
probably make it into the Oxford Dictionary Word of the Year for 2020. Okay, thank you very much indeed for that, members. So if we move on then to item 8, which is the Combined Authority Board agenda, we've already begun to stray into that territory, I think, there. If I just quickly run through a list of the significant items that will be on that agenda, and we can decide whether there are any questions we want to ask. So there'll take a few minutes, but hopefully not too many. I'm still hopeful of finishing by 1 p.m. in case anybody is worried or concerned about that. So the first item of significance on the board agenda will be the constitutional review. And we've already had an indication, I think, about a number of things we might want to ask. It's been suggested we might want to ask what representations the Combined Authority has made to central government about the long-standing issue of our quorum. Where we are required to have at least 10 members present out of 14 for these meetings, and that can sometimes be something of a stretch. So are you happy, committee, for us to ask that question? Yeah? If anybody dissents, could you wave your hand at any point on that? But I'm taking consent on that point. Also, Councillor Murphy, you wanted to raise a question about business board meetings under the Constitution item.
Yes, Chair. I think audit may be taking this up. I'm not sure. Maybe the officers could say, but I know it was discussed by members of the audit. It's about the business board role. And in the papers going to the board this week, it does say the role of the business board within the combined authority should be more clearly communicated to ensure that it is understood by the wider community. I think actually we need to maybe ask questions a bit stronger on that. Should the business board perhaps adopt the Nolan principles, particularly on transparency in local government, so that we do have things done in public and in a transparent manner? So I'm wondering whether that should be raised with the board this week.
Thank you very much, Councillor Murphy. Are members happy for us to ask a question about the view of the board about the business board meeting in public and about general transparency? Yeah? Okay, thank you.
I think there may be a similar issue on some of the skills work as well, but I'll wait for Councillor Coles to come in on that. Right,
okay. Councillor Coles, if we're talking generally about transparency and meeting in public, then is there anything you would want to put into that question from a skills perspective?
Thank you, Chair. No, I brought this up as one of my questions to the Skills Committee, which was just to look at how the Skills Committee and therefore we might see how we can review decisions that go through that process. I think I'm content with the answer, but I think the issues around the constitutional matters are somewhat separate. I think Councillor Murphy's covered those already.
Very much indeed. The next item on the board's agenda is the Autonomous Metro, the CAM SPV shareholder agreement, and we have just had a discussion there about the disquiet of this committee about access to timely information and discussion with officers for our task groups, both on that and also on the later item on bus reform. So are you content that we should ask a question seeking to gain assurance that those task and finish groups will have access to information in a timely manner on the issues within their remit? Yes? Councillor Gehring, you have a hand up. Is that a legacy?
Yeah,
hand?
I just wanted to highlight that I think given that we're now creating a wholly owned company, the transparency issues are going to become more pressing rather than less pressing, right? It's wholly owned by the combined authority. The staff will be co-located with the combined authority wherever they're ending up. But they could always say, because it's a private company, we don't let councillors know what the current discussions are on. And there's nothing, as I can see, in the shareholder agreement, which actually forces them to disclose information to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So I'm very concerned about the lack of transparency. These are quite significant sums once we get to the out of the planning and into the later business stages. And just sort of keeping us all in the dark is not going to work for the public going forward. So I think it's important to raise at this item that we would like to be informed, and we would like to continue to be informed even after this shareholding company has been created.
Right, so there's a specific question therefore about not only access to information about the project as a whole, but access to information and our rights of access to information and dialogue with the special purpose vehicle and the people responsible for that. Is that Councillor Sharp? You indicated to say something.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll touch on the last bit, then I'll go back. It's not so much, I mean, I agree with Councillor Gehring there. It's not so much dialogue I see it is more decisions, minutes of meetings, etc., personally. What I was going to say though was I raised this previously at the Task and Finish group about the way the different vehicles were changing and trying to understand where the governance and where the decision making was. And even if, and I feel even if some of this sort of documentation is exempt or they don't want it to be publicly disclosed, I feel as the Task and Finish group, we should at least have the opportunity to look at those papers that are, you know, are exempt and therefore, because otherwise I feel we're not fulfilling our role.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Sharp. I think we have previously established that we should have access to exempt information on the need to know basis. But I think it would be sensible to have that reinforced. Councillor Scott.
Thank you. I'm just seeking to support both Councillor Sharp and Councillor Gehring on this. Our role as a scrutiny committee is not being fulfilled if we're actually not doing this job of oversight in the sense of scrutiny rather than oversight in terms of ignoring. And it is notorious that commercial incompetence is a term that's used extraordinarily broadly to actually obfuscate or fail to communicate. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is what the combined authority is doing, but I think that in order for them to do their job properly, they must recognise our role as a scrutiny committee and that we can only do that if we do obtain the information. And if something is commercial incompetence, then it should come, as has been said, to this committee or the Task and Finish groups, because we then would be bound by the confidentiality provision. And there's no reason why we as elected councillors should not be able to scrutinise that information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Scott. Are we happy therefore to raise, I'm sorry, I see Councillor Williams and then Councillor Gehring. Is that a legacy hand again? Yeah, if you could, if people could remember to remove their blue hand once they have finished speaking, that would be very helpful. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. It was just on the sort of the setting up and the transparency and section, then the issues that have been raised. Obviously, it's important that everything is scrutinised and goes through proper channels, but I think there must be a solution to this, because in South Cambs, there is an investment strategy of 340 million, some of which is in limited liability partnerships, some of it's in companies and everything else. And while I might not always be happy with the levels of transparency to the public, to members, we've always had access to that information. And I'm sure that there could be a resolution. So I think it was sort of, not intentionally, but perhaps posed as a bit of a, you know, there's going to be no way of us knowing unless we knuckle it down. But I think there are examples out there where it could work and is working in places. So I'm sure it's something that can be overcome if all members are willing to, you know, communicate amicably with each other.
Thank you very much indeed for that. That's a helpful observation. So with that, are we content that we should be asking questions about access to information and specifically including the special purpose vehicle, the openness with which that operates and its transparency and the access that we have as overview and scrutiny members to information about that, including exempt information in a timely manner? Yes? Yep, good. Okay, thank you. The next item on the board agenda on Wednesday will be the A10 dualling and junctions, which will be approving release of £2 million from the capital budget to develop and procure the outline business case following a Department for Transport funding decision, which is expected in the near future. I had a question about that I thought we might ask, which is that if the Department for Transport funding decision on the dualling is in the negative, and we know that there has been a decision made to fund junction improvements, although we have as yet no indication of the actual figure behind that financially, But if the dualling is not approved by the Department for Transport for funding, will the whole of that 2 million be required to do an outline business case for junctions only? And is it their intention to proceed to do an outline business case for junction only work? Is that a question you're happy for us to ask? Yeah? And do you have any other questions you would want us to be asking on that item? Please indicate. No? Okay, thank you. So then the following item on the board agenda is the Market Towns Programme Investment Prospectus. And I think Councillor Hay, you had something you wanted to ask about that. You're on mute, Councillor Hay.
Yes, that's right. I mean, so I sit on the Growing Fenland Chatterers Committee, and I can see there is nothing in the proposals that affect chatterers. Is that because of timing? Because they haven't got their out-and-out business cases in time? And if so, they presumably will then go to the November meeting. But what I would also like to understand is, has there been any project proposals which, when independently appraised, did not reach the minimum pass mark? And if so, can we have some idea of what proposals they were?
Okay, thank you. That's a useful question too. Are members happy for us to ask those questions on Wednesday? Yeah. Councillor Corney.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't, I'm open to take everybody's opinion on this, but I mean, obviously, as I said in the pre-meet, I'm involved in the Ramsey prospectus. I think at the lower level, right down here in the group we've put together, it's knowing where it's going is probably a little bit woolly. So I don't know if something could go out a little bit more, explaining the process a little bit more to some. But the other thing as well is just to highlight to people that now with how things have changed dramatically this year, is to sort of emphasise on how important it is to spend this money correctly and wisely. I mean, it's we've really sort of sat down and sort of thought long and hard about this, and some of the things that we probably what we might call a nice flowery project. We think, well, actually, can we justify spending a large amount of money on making something look nice? We really have to spend this money very wisely. Just sort of emphasising that, really.
Right. Okay. So we could ask a question about the process and making sure the process is out there, and also who is engaged in putting together these bids might be helpful too as an exercise. Yeah. Happy with that as a line of questioning?
If everybody's happy with that, I mean, that's just as I say, it just people still coming to me now asking, well, how do we do? Not necessarily from Ramsey, but from other areas, or do you know how you're doing this? There's a little bit of a woolliness there.
Okay. Happy with that as a line of questioning, then, people? Yes. Good. Okay, the next item on the board agenda is the CAM outline business case non-statutory consultation, bracket central tunnel section, close bracket summary report, which is just for noting. I don't think we have any questions on that. Then there's the response to the England's Economic Heartlands transport consultation. I don't think we've got anything on that either. No. Bus reform we've already covered in terms of access to information and transparency. Is there anything else you would want us to ask on that? No? Okay. And then there are a number of papers relating to skills and business growth and so on. So Councillor Coles, Councillor Murphy, is there anything you would want to recommend that we be asking as questions related to those?
In relation to the skills element, Chair, I'm concerned that there's no need to ask questions. Anything that might be pertinent was asked at the Skills Committee, so I have asked.
Thank you, that's excellent. Councillor Murphy, did you have anything you wanted to ask?
Yeah, there are a number of things coming up, and particularly we want to know how the environment of resources to deal with COVID pandemics going. We need to know about that. But specifically, I think we should consider asking a question about the emergency transport regulation orders. I'll give some examples. On a Sunday in Peterborough, there was a tweet going out saying that roads were closing and temporary routes were going up for cyclists, and disabled access and pedestrian access was closing. And I understand in Cambridge, Mill Road Bridge was closed, etc., etc. I've made inquiries. The combined authority's money, the mayor's money, was used to pay for these, but there is clearly no detail about who made these decisions and where. Now, we've got two transport authorities, Peterborough and Cambridge, and certainly in Peterborough, this was not a member's decision. So could we ask who made the decisions to close, well, traffic routes?
Right, I don't know about Peterborough, but certainly in Cambridgeshire, the proposals for the various emergency TROs and the schemes which would require them came to the County Council's Highways and Transport Committee, and there have been, I think, at least two meetings with papers relating to those at them for tranche 1 and tranche 2. So we in Cambridgeshire have had quite a lot of member engagement in terms of which schemes were going to be put forward and which would require emergency TROs. And I know that the Mill Road closure in Cambridge was discussed by and with members. So I'm wondering if that's a particularly Peterborough problem, and one that you might want to pick up.
Thank you very much for that, because I know that was controversial, but well done, Cambridgeshire County Council, for having a committee to discuss it. As you know, we don't have committee structure in Peterborough.
Right.
And there were inputs made, and there is nowhere, there's also no executive decision notice that an executive member has made a decision, and there's no officer who's fessed up to making the decision either. The mayor has explained that he funded it. So can we ask who made the decisions in Peterborough?
Well, certainly the mayor received money from central government for these schemes, so it's not the mayor funding it. It's the mayor dispersing money from central government grant for these. But I suspect that this is a particularly Peterborough governance issue, which is probably, I mean, I think my recommendation to you, Councillor Murphy, would be to take that back to Peterborough City Council and ask those questions there, and then come back to us if you're dissatisfied and if there's anything that we can do further to ask. But I think initially it's probably a question for Peterborough as to how Peterborough members were engaged in that decision.
Okay, thank you, Chair. There are folk, and some people have said the mayor made the decision. Maybe that needs clarifying.
I think it certainly does in relation to Peterborough. Cambridgeshire, I've explained the situation there, but Peterborough, I have no knowledge of. I'd also wish to observe that having a committee system does not necessarily automatically mean greater access to information. In some cases, it can mean less, but I leave that as a thought. I think there was also a line of questioning about duplication of work, and in particular duplication of work with the Greater Cambridge Partnership. I think it was Councillor Williams who made that point, and is that something you feel, Councillor Williams, that this committee should be asking on Wednesday?
Thank you. Sorry, I was trying to, I thought I had my hand up, obviously didn't. It was just simply about the skills package that was presented to the Assembly, which will be going to the board shortly, which presents £2 million worth of funding into skills of Cambridge curriculum and other things, and just to make sure that we're not duplicating and we're getting the maximum use out of the money that's allocated across the two authorities.
Okay, thank you very much. Are you content for us to ask that? Councillor Scott, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you. Yes, just also if the additional point could be included that that there needs to be communication between the various authorities, the Combined Partnership, the Greater Cambridge Partnership, the County Council, in terms of ensuring that any money that is going towards retraining and skills needs to be used in the most productive way possible. So I'm endorsing, as I said earlier, Councillor Williams' point about no duplication, but adding the additional point that there needs to be an assurance that these authorities will work together so that they can make the maximum benefit for the people of the monies that are available. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Scott. So we have questions about collaboration between the various tiers, about working with the GCP to avoid duplication, about the environment of resources of the combined authority into COVID-19 work. I'm not sure where we hang that, but we'll find somewhere to hang that. And those are the three questions I think we have for the board on those issues. Is that correct? Are people happy with that? Yeah. Okay, I think we are then done on item 8 and the board agenda. So can I move us on, please, to item 9, which is the CPCA project register. And I believe we should have Roberta Fulton, who is the programme manager, to speak to us about that. Do we have Roberta?
Yeah, I've just putting her through now.
Marvellous, thank you very much indeed. Good morning, Roberta.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors. So item 9 of the agenda pack is the regular item members have requested to receive on the list of combined authority projects. This detail was corrected at the beginning of September 2020. As you can see, the list in the annex contains the live projects as well as those that completed since the last update, which was in May. So as members can see, 4 projects have closed, 3 have completed and 1 was approved to no longer proceed. So as a result of these completed projects, the overall list of combined authority projects has slightly reduced, but this continues to be updated as new initiatives are brought into the authority. I'm happy to take any questions on this list, if there are any. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Roberta. A number of members have suggested that if it's possible, we might want to see a little more information in these reports without them becoming excessive. And in particular, we had suggested that there might want to be 3 additional columns for each row. The first of those 3 being the expected final end date of the project. The second of the 3 being the next date at which that project comes to either the board or to an executive committee, so that we know when the next step is, which will enable us to integrate this work much better with our existing work programme and forward work programme. And the third, to be given a basic RAG rating as to whether the project is proceeding as expected, whether there are any slight issues with it, or whether it's a red rated project that we should be taking particular interest in. Is there any practical reason why that would be difficult, or is that something you could do for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the next update will be coming through at the end of the year, beginning of next, so I can pull that information together then, and then we can review it again and see if that's the level of detail provided is correct.
That's fabulous. Thank you very much indeed, Roberta. That's very helpful. Does Councillor Hay, you wanted to say something?
There is one other thing that I would be quite interested to know. On the bottom of the list of closed projects, the M11 Junction 8 no longer proceeding, it would be helpful to have a short narrative to tell us why it's been decided to abandon that particular project.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that particular project, the tender returns on all of the work going on, I think there's about 5 received, and they all came back over budget, which led to quite a large funding gap. So work continued with the Essex County Council, who confirmed to the combined authority back in July that they were going to put that project on hold. There was therefore no further project to be developed by the Combined Authority and Essex County Council. So a paper was taken, apologies, to the Transport Committee and the Business Board in July to notify that that project would no longer be proceeding and that the £1 million of growth funds would be reallocated to other projects.
I think we'd seen a note to that effect at the time a couple of months ago, as you say, and of course also it wasn't actually our project to begin with because it is an Essex project. It was simply one that we had agreed, or that the Combined Authority had agreed to contribute a sum of money towards, which is now. Does that mean it's no longer needed, or is the project being revised? Has the project been abandoned, or is it simply being revisited?
I believe it's on hold, yeah. So it would and there's no funding for this financial year, so it's on hold at the moment.
So it's not strictly no longer proceeding; it's simply no longer proceeding
as a Combined Authority project,
according to the original expectations in light of the budget. But has the Combined Authority now released that money back into the pot, or so any approach from Essex to us for a revised project would be a completely fresh approach, and that money has not been held back.
No, not at all. No, it's gone back into the growth fund pot.
Okay, thank you. That's very clear. Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Ask Roberta anything? No, Councillor Hay, I think you have a legacy hand. Your blue hand is still up.
Oh, sorry, it wasn't showing on my screen.
Oh, it was showing on mine. So strange things happening. Right, okay, well, thank you very much indeed, Roberta. That's very helpful indeed, and we shall look forward to seeing you in a few months' time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, lead member questions to the Executive Committees and Business Board is the next item. I think there's only been one Executive Committee at which questions have been asked. So, Councillor Coles, did you have anything you wish to say to us about the questions and responses on Skills Committee?
Thank you, Chair. I'm content with the answers to the questions that I got. I think everyone has received them. I think the issue for me was the practical aspects of trying to read through 438 pages with a fairly brief amount of time, lots of duplication in the answers and getting rather lost at times about to which part of the agenda one should ask the question. I did my very best, but it's really a plea if we could possibly have reports received with some extra time, or at least when they're complete, so that we've got an opportunity to consider them more thoroughly. I did my best. I could have done better had I had a little bit more time. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a point well made, not just in relation to this committee, but in relation to a lot of others. I mean, I'm certainly aware there are weeks where if you happen to be on two particular bodies, you can have an agenda of 500 pages and an agenda pack of 400 pages in the same week, and it is really unviable, even if you've done the best speed reading course in the world. So yes, I feel the pain of that, and it is something we need to address. I think we're all getting bogged down. Particularly, it seems to me that the more we don't print stuff anymore and we have stuff electronically, the more things seem to bloat because you're not worried about how much paper you're putting through the printer is another issue maybe. Okay, so we will have meetings of the executive committees in November, and I will be liaising with our lead members in relation to those committees and putting together a short meeting for deriving questions for those meetings in November. So thank you very much indeed. I don't think there's anything further we need to do on that item. The Combined Authority Forward Plan is therefore item 11, and we should have all received that. The majority of that is in fact the business for this coming Wednesday we've already discussed. I understand the reserve board meeting date of the 28th October is unlikely to progress. I've just mentioned the fact that I'll be liaising with lead members about the executive committees in November, and then the next board meeting will be the 25th of November. I don't think there's anything further we need to do or say on that item unless members use the blue hand to indicate otherwise. And I don't see anybody wishing to. Oh, Councillor Gehring.
Yeah, just a quick technical question. I'm seeing the mayor doing a lot of media kind of work. I'm wondering when PERDA officially starts for the combined authority, because it strikes me that some of the PR work that is being done by the mayor is less about the combined authority and more about the mayor himself and his political positions going forward.
Robert Parkin, could you advise us? Do you have a start date for PERDA?
I could pull a date. I just need to get a specific date. Of course, it wouldn't be for a very considerable time, given that an election on the 5th of May or in May next year. I'd need to check, but we're certainly not talking September, October of the year before.
No, I'd be expecting mid-March.
Yes.
Something like that. It's usually about 6 weeks, isn't it? Something like that. So yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed for that. Councillor Williams.
I was just going to say that it's normally 6 weeks and a series of days ahead of the election. So normally sort of it's around the 25th, 26th of March. So nowhere near.
Yeah, indeed.
But also, I think you'll find any political group in charge of anything we see at South Cambs all the time.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that. Then item 12 is our own work programme. So we have received that. Are there any comments or suggestions on that work programme? We have a number of people coming to see us. We moved the Community Land Trust presentation, which should have been today, into next month in view of the fact that we had Baroness Brown with us and we wanted to give her the full hour, which we pretty much took. So that will be in October, which is a fallow month in our terminology if the board does not meet that month, and we suggest it will not. We also have an opportunity next month because we will have the appropriate directors both for skills and for housing with us. And that will be a useful opportunity to discuss digital connectivity, which is on our work plan, with both of those directors present, because it is clearly something that spreads across both of those directorates and both of those committee responsibilities. So with that, does anybody have any other suggestions, comments, observations on the work plan, or are you happy to agree it as it is? I'm seeing no. Oh, I'm going to say I see no dissent, but Councillor Gehring is now indicating.
Not really dissent, Chair. I think we should not forget the suggestion by Baroness Brown to ask her to come back, maybe even in February, to report on the progress of her commission. I think the session today was very worthwhile.
Yes, I would agree. And February is also a fallow month, I think, from our perspective. So would you want to pencil in Baroness Brown for February 2021? Yeah, I think that seems to me to be a sensible suggestion. Yes, I also wondered whether, in view of the fact that we weren't able to have the chair of the CAM Task and Finish group with us today, whether we might want to, and I know we had a conversation about it, but it was a conversation that threw up a number of issues, whether we might want to reprogram that in for October as well, in the hope that Councillor Price will be able to join us for that and we can perhaps have a more extensive discussion. Does that seem a sensible thing to do? Yes? Councillor Sharp.
Just very briefly, yes, I totally agree. We do need that on the next meeting, but just for Robert's benefit, I'm sure Marcus and Jocelyn will agree. I think we do need a Task and Finish group CAM Metro meeting relatively soon so we can sort of get these issues moving.
Agreed.
Okay, so if we can ask the Task and Finish group to ensure that it has met by the middle of October, then that gives time for some kind of written note to be drawn up and put on the agenda for us to discuss, rather than simply having a verbal update. Are members content with that? Yeah. Okay. So with those changes, are we happy to agree the work plan under that item then? Yeah. And then item 13 finally is to agree the date of our next meeting, which, as we've already said, is Monday the 26th of October, and the meeting will begin at 11 a.m. and will be on Zoom, as this one is. So with that, Robert Fox.
Yeah, sorry for not showing the blue hand. It just occurred to me, just a reminder for members that the pre-meeting that starts at 10 o'clock, it will be the same link that you receive for the 11 o'clock meeting is the one you use for the 10 o'clock.
Yep, indeed. Okay, great. Thank you very much indeed. We are 9 minutes, I think, ahead of our deadline time of 1 p.m. So thank you all very much. Thank you to officers, those present and those who've already left, for your attendance and help and support today. And thank you very much to members for your contribution. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.